All right, let's get going on this. So my name is John Grubb with the Bay Area Council. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. We're really excited to talk to you about our action plan for 2024. We want you to participate. We want you to participate today. So for the next hour, we're going to do a rapid fire presentation of our staff, and then we're going to do Q&A at the back end of it. And so to get that going, please remember to chat in Q&A, and then we'll return to that when we get there towards the end section of it. So it is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce the amazing Jim Wunderman, the President and CEO of the Bay Area Council. Jim, please take it away.
Well, thanks, John. You're very kind, and thanks everyone for joining. And we're excited to run through this. And I will make an attempt to be brief here because there's a lot to cover in a short period of time. And we do hope you'll participate. We are going to record this, so just so that you're aware. And why don't we go ahead? Let's just run through real quick. So can't start this out without providing good wishes to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game on Sunday, and all hopes that never wanted to go to Las Vegas more than in a couple of weeks. So go Niners. And, you know, while we're at it, the Warriors won a big game last night, and Kuminga played great, and the Sharks have won 3 in a row, which is amazing. So a good moment in Bay Area sports. Go ahead. So I want to start by sharing the mission of the Bay Area Council. Just read it for a second. This is kind of our North Star for our organization. And, this is what we're trying to do. And different people interpret different aspects of this in different ways. But bottom line is we love this region. I think that's what makes the Bay Area Council special, is we're very committed to making the Bay Area a super successful, super happy place that brings a wonderful life and opportunity to everyone who's here, or people who want to come here. And so we really want to be serious about achieving this mission. It's certainly not an easy mission, and it's not an easy time. But just so you're aware, this is what we're focused on achieving. And these are some of the things that we do, that the work touches on. And I would make the point that they're not they're not mutually exclusive. These things touch on each other. One affects the other. The business climate is affected by transportation and housing and safety and all of that. And so our committees, our teams work together. Our organization tries to be really holistic. We prioritize some of these things and put more time and effort into some of them as they rise in necessity. But this sort of gives you a sense of what you'll be hearing about today, and you'll see some really great presentations from the team. And I don't have to say to this group because you're here, but please get involved, and the folks in your organization. We welcome leadership and participation. That's what makes the organization successful. It's really you. And I also just want to thank in advance the professional team at the Bay Area Council, really absolutely second to none. So let's take it away and hear the presentations and have some conversations, and I'll turn it over to Laura Hill.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura, and I manage the Council's public safety policy portfolio, and I also assist with transportation policy. Similar to 2023, public safety will be one of our top priorities of the year, and a lot has changed and been accomplished since we launched our public safety policy area in late 2022. We now have a very strong group of committee co-chairs, as you can see here, and we formally launched this committee, and we're looking forward to a really productive year ahead. Before I get into our 2024 work plan, I just want to take a moment to highlight one of our biggest successes in this issue area in 2023, which was transit safety, and in particular, safety on BART. And we successfully advocated for more security on BART trains and in stations. We helped to kill a state bill that would have removed the criminal penalties from fare evasion. We also helped to push for the on-time deployment of the first next generation fare gates, which is now active at the West Oakland station. Among many other things, but bottom line, people are feeling safer when taking BART, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So next slide. In 2024, we're going to continue to focus on transit safety, but we also have some other lofty goals, one of which is that we're working to launch a region-wide officer recruitment and perception campaign to help fill vacant positions with local and diverse hires. And we've identified the right advertising firm to carry this campaign, and we're currently fundraising with the goal to launch later this year. We additionally will be addressing retail theft and property crime, which, as you know, the Bay Area is particularly burdened by. And in fact, our first Public Safety Committee meeting in late February or early March will be about this issue specifically. So be on the lookout for that invite. We'll also be focusing on how to best leverage technology as a tool to enhance public safety. And I'll finally just mention that due to the public safety crisis currently taking place in Oakland, we'll also be launching a targeted approach in response to that region specifically. And our first member event on this topic is Monday, February 5th from 4 to 5 p.m. in downtown Oakland. More information on that is on our website, and you can also email me. So lots to come this year on the public safety front, and we really need your involvement to have the greatest impact. So please contact me if you'd like to get involved.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so from one difficult issue to the next, we're going to go to Adrian Covert to talk about homelessness.
Great, thank you so much, John. Next slide, please. Great. This is our homelessness committee. A tough issue. It's been festering for decades, but really over the past 6-7 years, we've seen California really take a turn in the wrong direction. In general, the Bay Area in particular, we have 2 new co-chairs on our committee this year, Elizabeth Funk from Dignity Moves and Tom Wolf, a recovery advocate for the Salvation Army. And we're pretty excited about what we have in store. We did have a really important win at the end of last year for our committee work, in that we led a coalition of over a dozen businesses and business organizations to draft and file an amicus brief with the Supreme Court of the United States to take up the Grants Pass versus Johnson case, which is a Ninth Circuit case downstream of a previous case known as Martin v. Boise, which makes it much harder and more difficult and expensive for cities to bring encampment residents indoors, save lives, and restore access to public spaces. So that was a win, and that's going to be guiding a lot of the work this year. Now, at the highest level, California's housing shortage is creating homeless people faster than the rate at which we can build homeless housing, even with funding from Governor's Project Homekey. So our focus on permanent housing has created a shelter shortage in California, which subjects people entering homelessness into unimaginable trauma, which then creates or exacerbates psychological or substance abuse disorders, which creates a vicious cycle that makes the problem much more difficult to solve. So for 2024, we're going to be sponsoring legislation with Senator Becker to speed shelter construction. Fundamentally, we have to focus on bringing people indoors, saving lives, and restoring access to public spaces. 2, we're going to be sponsoring legislation with Assemblymember Haney to allow sober treatment facilities to compete with state homeless funding. Currently, that's not allowed. So if you're someone who's addicted and wants to become sober, too bad, you got to go into a facility where there's addicts all around you, where drugs are prevalent, and where your journey to sobriety is much more difficult. And 3, we're also going to help prepare for a post-Martin v. Boise legal landscape. The Supreme Court is widely expected to toss the Boise framework, so a lot of work is going to have to be done on the legal side to empower cities and the state to resolve encampments, bring people indoors, and save lives. And I strongly recommend folks reaching out if they want to participate in this committee.
Sorry, thanks, Adrian. Let's move on to appreciate, there's a ton of work here that we have to get through really quickly. So apologies for going so quickly on this stuff, but let's go to Luis Morante and Matt Regan for housing.
Thanks, John. As Adrian mentioned, the region's housing crisis is largely, it explains the big upsurge in homelessness our region faces, and the council is dedicated to doubling the rate of home production in an effort to stabilize prices and eventually bring them down. Next slide, please. This year, we had tremendous success in sponsoring legislation. We sponsored 4 bills that became the law. We worked on AB 1033, which allows condos from ADUs, which in the markets in the United States that allow those are much cheaper than traditional homes. We sponsored AB 1297, which supersized the density bonus law. Just this week, a developer a couple blocks from the Bay Area Council's headquarters announced they're almost doubling the size of projects with that law and adding middle-income housing to the mix as well. So great development already. We sponsored AB 1633, which changed the relationship between CEQA and housing in really fundamental and important ways. And we sponsored AB 1114 from Assemblymember Matt Haney, which ended the practice in some cities, including San Francisco, of requiring discretionary review for things like building code permits, which increases litigation and political risk for projects. So all around, great stuff going on in the legislature. We were also more active in amicus briefs. Just this month, the Supreme Court heard Sheets, which is a case largely believed to completely rework how housing fees work in the United States, and we're really engaged in that advocacy. For 2024, we're focusing on 3 main areas, at least at this point. Our co-chair, Robin Barral from Hanson Bridget, has identified historic preservation districts as something we should get more involved in because local governments are using them to evade state housing laws. Our members are some of the only folks brave enough to try to develop in the coastal zone. And so focusing on the Coastal Commission is going to be important for us. And last but not least, we're hearing increasing concern from folks on insurance, and so want to be more involved in that conversation. And we're looking for feedback from our members about how best to be involved, if at all. We also do project advocacy. Just this week, we won the approval of the largest apartment building in Brisbane's history. We want to continue and supersize that work for 2024. Anyone, including non-members, can seek our endorsement for a project, and we encourage you to send projects our way. In terms of regulatory advocacy, we're getting more involved in regional boards and have had some success in that this year. Our main focus in the housing space has been on the Regional Water Board, which we won a restoration of a TOD streamlining that they removed in 2021, and we're going to continue to fight that fight to make sure that it's preserved. And then folks have probably been hearing a lot about the regional housing needs allocation process. The council was a sponsor of SB 828, which required local governments to zone for 2.5 million new homes. We're going to make sure that we're following through on implementation of that and that law is a success. So in general, we're, like I said, trying to double the housing production in the Bay Area. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me with suggestions for how to accomplish that or to get involved in any of our housing-related committees. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Louis. Next, we're going to talk about our work in climate change, and we're going to go to Adrian and Julian Lake about this. And on each of these slides, please note the amazing leaders from you, our members that are stepping up to lead these committees. And again, participate, work with them, help them help us.
Great, thank you, John. Let me just get it started on the climate change front. So we have 3 separate committees that touch on climate change one way or another. So if you're interested in the climate space, do tune in for the next 3.5 to 4 minutes as myself and Julian Lake, my colleague, go into it. I'll just start off with a win. From last year, we helped secure final approval of the Sites Reservoir Project, which has been a council priority for over a decade and which has involved many hearings, many letters, many op-eds, and it's going to store 1.8 million acre-feet of water when it's completed. And we also helped secure passage of the governor's streamlining package for water infrastructure, green energy, and semiconductor facilities. So if you're interested in climate change mitigation, climate adaptation, or energy policy, these are committees for you. And so with that, for the first couple committees, let me turn it over to Julian to go into.
Thanks, Adrian. Hi, everyone. Julian Lake. I'm zooming into you guys from our new San Jose office, which we opened towards the end of last year. Bay Area Council is truly inclusive of the entire Bay Area, and I'm happy to be based here. When I joined the Bay Area Council a little over 6 months ago, we sort of had two central goals with our climate and energy committees. One was to support innovative climate solutions, and the second was to cut green tape so that we could make climate projects pencil faster and reduce our carbon emissions at the rate we need to meet our state climate goals. We were early supporters, as Adrian mentioned, of the governor's CEQA streamlining package that passed last year, which sped up and granted expedited judicial review to key climate projects in the state. And this year, one of our central goals is to build upon that success by extending those expedited judicial review streamlinings to sustainable aviation fuel or SAF projects, as well as carbon capture and storage projects. The California Air Resources Board has outlined that these are the only realistic ways to decarbonize some very difficult to decarbonize sectors. And we know that they're centrally important to both not only our airlines, but those that use airlines, which is many members. We also were able to take a fantastic tour of the Diablo Canyon Power Plant last year and learn about the incredible team and safety measures taken to shore up the 10% of California's energy that is done by nuclear. And so we are expanding our purview to include small modular nuclear reactors as something that the Bay Area Council wants to see more of in California. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Adrian to talk about our water and resilience projects.
Great. Next slide, please. So our Water and Climate Resilience Committee is dedicated to preparing the Bay Area and California, but mostly the Bay Area, for the climate changes that are already underway, particularly when it comes to drought resilience and sea level rise resilience on the Bay shoreline. So one of our first priorities is a 2024 climate resilience bond. The past 2 years of budget cuts have been particularly focused on the climate priorities that the governor laid out back in the surplus days. So the administration 2 years ago called out for a climate resilience bond on the 2024 ballot. That is still in the cards for the 2024 ballot. It's in the hands of the legislature. So we're focused a lot there. We're advocating for funding priorities to be on recycled water for drought resilience, certain types of desalination opportunities, and multi-benefit sea level rise adaptation projects ringing the Bay shoreline. So there should be some news in this space in the next few weeks. So definitely stay tuned there. On number 2, developing a pipeline of adaptation projects. This is through our Bay Area Council Foundation's California Resilience Challenge. This is a really one-of-a-kind philanthropic initiative that's run out of the Bay Area Council, where we directly support through contributions of members and other businesses and institutions elsewhere in California, not just in the Bay Area. We support a pipeline of climate adaptation projects in under-resourced communities across the state. A lot of under-resourced communities in California they're kind of stuck on the starting line. They don't know where to go when it comes to how to increase their resilience to drought and flood and wildfire in the face of the changes that are surrounding them. With grants from our Resilience Challenge, we help them get started. And we've got an amazing track record and pipeline of projects and that we're developing in close partnership with the governor's office. It's a huge win and really helps the council stand out. And then finally, shoreline development. The Bay Area is one of the world's great coastal regions, but you wouldn't really know it looking at our moribund shoreline. So we're looking at ways to revamp and revitalize access and vibrancy to the Bay shoreline. So if you're interested in any of those priorities, definitely contact Julian and I.
Thanks, Adrian, and thank you, Julian. And yeah, on that on the waterfront development, we also have sea level rise coming, and I think it's $120 billion worth of cost that we're somehow going to need to pay for. And development or bringing that private sector funds in can really help. I also want to compliment Adrian on the ChatGPT pictures that he put in his slides. They look lovely. Let's turn it to Emily Loper in transportation, always one of our most important areas that we work on.
Thanks, John. So I'm Emily Loper. I lead our transportation work here at the Bay Area Council. Transportation has long been a legacy issue for the council, dating back to the creation of the BART system. And we continue to work to make it faster, easier, and more comfortable for everyone to move around the region. We have many ways to engage in this work. You see, we have a full transportation committee that meets quarterly, and then we also have several subcommittees that have very robust engagement. They meet frequently in these specific topic areas. So our big win from the last few months was securing $5 billion in the state budget to ensure that our transit agencies could continue to operate, basically that they wouldn't go bankrupt and could continue to operate service despite the financial challenges that they're facing due to reduced ridership post-pandemic. So right after that, we then defeated a bridge toll measure that would have raised tolls to further fund transit operations, but instead we wanted the transit agencies to focus on using the state funds to make improvements on their systems in order to draw riders back. We made big progress on getting BART specifically, as Laura mentioned earlier, to improve the safety and cleanliness and overall experience of riding BART. So next slide. Today, we are faced with a monumental challenge of trying to adapt our transportation system to meet the needs of commuters when travel patterns have changed so fundamentally since the pandemic. So we have 5 streams of transportation work that are aimed at, again, making it easier for us all to move around the Bay Area. The first is both saving and improving public transit, making a world-class public transit system here in the Bay Area. The second is advocating for road, highway, and bridge infrastructure improvements. The third is water transit. We lead the advocacy to expand ferry service to all corners of the Bay and serve new markets, particularly new waterfront developments around the region. 4, we support the growth of transportation innovation, so autonomous vehicles, ride-hailing services, employer shuttles, other private modes of transportation, and new mobility services. And then 5, we take a regional approach to improving the efficiency and sustainability of our goods movement operations. That includes goods moving in and out of ports and then around the region. So lots of ways to engage in this, and feel free to reach out to me with questions or feedback. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Emily. So I'm going to stand in next for Patrick Kellerman, who leads our healthcare work and is dealing with some health issues, not himself, but for family members. So first of all, we have 2 incredible leaders with Bill Eisenberg and Carrie Owen Pleats from Sutter and Kaiser, respectively. The big work onto the next slide for the healthcare committee this year is going to be on Proposition 1, which is, I think the catchphrase they're using there is treatment, not tents, but this is a big transformation of our mental health care infrastructure, at least state-run healthcare infrastructure, and to be able to get a lot more supply of that to people who need it. And so we've already been supporting that and showing up and helping to shape it, first of all, as it was developed, and then now we're going to support it to get onto the ballot. We're always working to promote equitable care, both those that have access to it and then those that are providing the care that they look like and the rest of California, who are doctors, nurses, and everyone else that's involved with that. We are not big believers in single payer. Although it keeps coming back, and so we work with all of our members to prevent single payer from getting across. And then, of course, we always are looking to ensure value for spending. So this is to find more cost-effective ways of delivering healthcare in whatever form it comes, and that's what the committee works on. It's a great committee. It's a really high-level group of healthcare players that are there, and I really encourage you to participate if you can, to work with Patrick. And let's move on to federal government relations. I do want to flag here again, a couple of you have been great about putting in questions in the chat, and please do put further questions in the chat. We're going to turn to those questions at the end of the session. You also can just ask straight out by raising your hand. But let's start with Matt Regan to talk about state government relations.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take just a quick minute to give you a brief history in Bay Area Council involvement in Sacramento in the last 10, 12 years. In the last decade or more, we have been successful in setting up the Bay Area Caucus, which didn't exist a decade ago. For all intents and purposes, it is now the most, for all intents and purposes, the most powerful caucus in the legislature. We have the Speaker from the Bay Area. We have the Senate President Pro Tem from the Bay Area. We have pretty much all the juice committees are chaired by Bay Area legislators. And if you think back a decade or more, all of those positions were held by legislators from Southern California. So thanks to our efforts, your efforts, we have really increased our influence in the Capitol and intend to keep that influence. Going back a decade or more, the Bay Area Council would probably have been sponsoring maybe one bill a year as an organization. And from today's presentations you've seen, we're probably doing 2 or 3 per policy area in this current session. So we've greatly expanded our reach and influence in the Capitol. We have an office, a block from the Capitol. It's your office in the state Capitol, so please avail of it. It's got a wonderful conference room. It's on the top floor of the Esquire building, so please view that as your office. And we continue to work with our legislative body there and to make sure that your voices are heard loud and clear in the Capitol. We are holding our annual Sacramento Day on March 19th, which if you've been on that trip before, you will know that it is an incredibly worthwhile use of a day in your calendar. We will meet with leaders of state departments. The governor is usually on our agenda, on down to leaders of important policy committees and et cetera, and then we end with a fun evening at Ella. So please put that on your calendar. Look forward to having you participate in our government relations work at the state level. Frank, kicking it to you.
Thanks, Matt. We knew that 2023 was going to be a challenging legislative year, and obviously that was borne out. You can ask Kevin McCarthy, I think he would agree. So we really kept our focus on projects that stood to benefit from the various new funding streams that came out of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and CHIPS and Science Act. And we really kicked that off in March with our delegation, which was fantastic. We had about 24 members come out, led by Jim and Christina Lawson. It was a wonderful trip, and we spent some very good quality time with top administration officials at Department of Energy, Commerce, HUD, Transportation, obviously. And then a big Hill Day, which is a very, very busy set of meetings, but really productive. And I take this opportunity to encourage you all to please come and join us in May 7th through 9th for this year's delegation. Going back to some of these funding streams, these efforts are massive. They're led by their principals, and they include vast coalitions. But it is worth pointing out a number of significant regional projects that we advocated for. And these are, discretionary grants that are on top of the plussed up federal dollars that are coming through and formula funding. So $400 million for the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm sure everyone saw that. An interesting one was a new pilot program through the Department of Transportation, the Reconnecting Communities program. The $680,000 grant to study the removal of 980 in Oakland. We were disappointed because the local press reported it as a $980 million grant, and sadly, that was not true. But we'll keep our fingers crossed in the next round. $31 million for SFO for its international terminal, $16 million for WIDA for rapid electric emission-free ferries. These are all things that we're proud to be part of coalitions advocating for. And oddly enough, there's actually action right now on 2 of our primary legislative priorities going back years. The first one is looking for some state and local tax relief after the tax bill during the Trump administration. I'm sure most of you know that state and local tax deduction was capped which has really hurt states like California and especially places like our region. We've been fighting to get that cap either elevated or eliminated entirely. There are also a suite of business tax breaks that have expired for R&D expenses and enhanced interest deductibility. That's been an issue. And then first and foremost, the low-income housing tax credit. We pushed hard on a piece of legislation that is introduced over and over and has not been able to make it past the finish line, called the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. All three of these things, in some way or another, some directly, some on the periphery, are part of this tax bill that's currently making its way through Congress. It just passed Ways and Means and a markup last week with a 40-3 vote. So highly bipartisan. It includes some of the key provisions in the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. It includes those business tax breaks. Ironically enough, the one thing that could hang it up is a number of Republican legislators from New York who really want SALT relief. So if we can manage to square that circle, if we can manage to get Republicans on board in the Senate, if that bill comes to the floor in the House, I would say we're 12 miles into a marathon, but it's closer than we've ever been, and we're going to keep our foot on the gas there. So please, engage with our work out here. Join us for our delegation in May, and thanks for the time today.
Thanks, Frank, and thanks, Matt. And yes, just a second or third what Matt and Frank have said. We can help you with your own issues, even if it's not one of the ones that we've talked about here. So please get in touch with Frank or Matt if you would like us to put in a letter of support on something. We'll have to review the issue, of course, but or give a me too at one of the hearings. We're there to help you out with your agendas, as well as the collective agenda. And then we're going to end with Jeff Belisario. We don't just have opinions, we try to back them up with facts, and Jeff and team are the providers of facts.
Thanks, John.
What facts you got for us? Yeah.
I lead the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. We're the council's think tank. We do all sorts of research that is foundational to all of these policy issues that you've heard about today. But I want to kind of give you another flavor of the work that we do, because we're tracking really anything and everything that can impact the Bay Area economy. So I want to start first on business taxes. And this is a line of research that we started back in 2022, looking particularly at Oakland. We continued then in the past year, did a large analysis region-wide of business taxes across 12 cities, showing a massive gulf between San Francisco and effectively everyone else. That report is now being used by the controller, being used by the mayor's office in San Francisco as tax breaks are being talked about, as revenue negative measures are being talked about. So we found that to be hugely influential. We also have another report coming out this spring that looks at taxes for businesses and employers in our region and how they compare to other regions across the country. So look for that. The second one here, you may have seen in the news, we did a report in the spring of 2023. It was an index that looked at economic recovery across 25 of the largest regions in the United States. Our regions, the San Francisco region, the San Jose region, effectively near or at the bottom on many of those metrics, like airport recovery, transit recovery, hotel recovery, job recovery. It was a very negative report, but kind of painted the picture of the issues that we have in our region, particularly as they impact downtowns. We're going to come back with CBRE and do another iteration of that report, updating some of those numbers, but now being much more positive and looking at the green shoots for our downtown economies, talking about the policy initiatives that are already in place or could be in place to drive vibrancy downtown. So look for that in the summer of 2024. And then lastly, we do a massive line of work that looks at our region's connections globally. Sean Randolph on our team leads this work. He's done work on China, the EU, India, name a country, and we've done it. We find these reports to be huge. They really kind of position the council as a global leadership organization where global leaders are meeting and thinking. They also really highlight our position as a gateway economy globally, right? It's not just about the US economy. We have iterations and interactions with folks across the globe. So look for studies there this year on Ireland, and the UK and probably some other countries we haven't even figured out yet, but we really enjoy doing that work. So that's the Institute. The one piece that's not on here, and I'll mention, we do a lot of work around economic impact reporting for employers, whether it's a company looking at building a new site and wanting to have something that tells a positive story to a local city council, or a company that's dealing with regulatory issues or something at the state or even nationwide. We've got models and we've got a long history of doing reports in the airline industry and biotech and in tech that look at kind of the positives of what a company brings to the local community in terms of jobs, in terms of charitable donations, and in terms of kind of total GDP addition from those corporate actors. So that's the Institute. I think I can turn it back over to John. I think we're like way on time. So back to you, John.
Yeah, thanks all. Compliment to my colleagues for going so quickly, although the work is very important. We're now going to turn to Q&A. I'm going to go through the questions that were in the chat first, and then also if you would like to ask a question, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. So Maureen Futner asked if she writes, we're slowly hearing more about office to residential transformations. Are you seeing that this has any viability? Are there any legislative efforts underway to incentivize? And I'm going to turn over to Matt and Louis to respond to this a little bit more fully. And it's not just a San Francisco issue, of course. This is happening in San Jose, in Oakland, and other places. And so how is that going? And is there any work in the legislature or otherwise to help out with office to housing transformations?
Well, John, if I may, I'll take the local piece first and then pass over to Louis for what's happening in the state capitol. But obviously, we're hardly a day goes by without a news story about additional unoccupied office space in the Bay Area, particularly in San Francisco. I think we're in the millions of square feet that's currently available in the region. So yes, converting it to a use that's profitable and worthwhile, like housing, is something that's on the front burner. It's difficult in many instances to convert Class A office space from an engineering perspective to residential, but not impossible. It's very difficult from a financial perspective also. It does require considerable incentives in the form of tax breaks and even upfront financial incentives to make these conversions pencil, but it's not impossible. New York did it in the mid-1990s when they had a downturn in office rental activity, and were able to create tens of thousands of new housing units in Midtown Manhattan from unused office. So our executive committee yesterday just voted to support a measure that'll be on the ballot in San Francisco in March for real estate transfer tax relief for office space that's converted to residential. That's the first step in the process. There will be other steps, and I understand there's efforts afoot in Sacramento to create additional incentives. So I'll kick it to Louis to talk about those.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. There are, Assemblymember Matt Haney is committed to a bill that would streamline the conversion process through local reviews. It would also probably provide a little bit of relief on some of your building code requirements, like having a window that can open. Still more details to flesh out on that, but as Matt said, the challenges here are actually quite staggering. There's also been conversation about whether to try to do a property tax abatement or deduction as an incentive for these conversions. That's been something that our friends at Spur have been pushing, but with the budget position such as it is, the state of California is $58 billion in the hole. It's very unlikely that we're going to see some version of that this year, but money is the thing that would really get these projects moving at the end of the day. So we'll keep an eye on that and keep pushing forward in the future.
Thank you, Louis, and thank you, Matt. So staying with the topic of money, Darlene G asks about the very amazing amount of money that it's been spent on homelessness, but also is there accountability for that? And, have we seen anything for it? I think, Adrian, I'll call on you to answer that. To the good, we've probably seen what does or doesn't work, but Adrian, could you talk about that a little more?
Sure. A big problem with our homeless solutions that California has been focused on for the past 15, 20 years, is that we're choosing to fund things that can't scale. And everyone kind of understands that they can't scale, which is the most frustrating part. We've been focused on permanent housing, which is the statewide cost average is about $600,000 a door to build. In the Bay Area, it's closer to $1 million a door to build. And at those prices, we would need to have about $115 billion to right-size that solution to scale. Does anybody have a reasonable plan for raising $115 billion? They do not. So instead, we put in, $4 billion here, $1 billion there towards the solution. And the governor's Home Key project was really successful in bringing down the cost of creating new permanent units by buying cheap motels and hotels and converting them. But they brought that per unit cost down from about $600,000 to $300,000, which is a big deal. But still, you need $50 billion to scale that solution. So I don't think we can really, when we're talking about solving homelessness, I don't think we can really do it without at least a 10-year supply boom to flood the zone with new options for housing vouchers and whatnot, and to bring the per capita rate of homelessness down through just naturally occurring affordable housing, paired up with a major investment from the feds on solutions like Section 8 and more public housing. In the meantime, California can and should be focused on things that we can scale with the money that we have, which is interim solutions, shelters to save lives, bring people indoors, and restore access to public spaces. We have the resources to do that. Those scale at about $40,000 to $50,000 a door. You can do 12 people indoors using those solutions for the cost of permanent lease building one permanent unit of housing. So that's where we think we need to really shift our focus. That's where our legislation is focused on for the coming year, and where I think our opportunities vis-a-vis the Martin v. Boise case open up. There's a broader issue about corruption in the nonprofit space, which I think needs to be looked at. That requires some more investigative power, unfortunately, than I think we have at the moment. But there's a couple different ways you could tackle it.
Thanks, Adrian. So Will Ritter is complimentary of our involvement with the Regional Network Management Customer Advisory Group. So this is about getting, if we can't merge all of the transportation agencies, at least have the experience for a rider feel like they're all put into one. But he asked further if we are involved, Emily, in the 2026 ballot measure. And Jim, you can weigh in on this too, of course, but what's the answer to that, Emily?
Yes, very involved. So yeah, we've been working closely with MTC and the various transportation agencies and other stakeholders around the region to develop this framework for the authorizing legislation that Senator Wiener is running this year that would enable MTC to put a regional measure on the ballot, which is currently planned for 2026, but could be at a later date. So that framework was just approved by the MTC Commission just yesterday. It has it outlines the potential revenue sources that could generate the funding to support this measure. It outlines basically funding categories. It's not a specific expenditure plan, but the funding categories include a combination of significant new funding to support transit operations to prevent this fiscal cliff in the future, but also to transform the systems into a better system going forward. And then also a bunch of other transportation projects that voters want to see in the region, road and highway and congestion relief improvements. So it'll be so MTC just approved that to start basically the legislative process, and we'll keep you all informed as that gets amended as it goes through the legislative process this year.
Thanks, Emily.
And part of that I should mention is the regional network manager is that using the regional measure funds to ensure that transit agencies are working in a much more integrated and coordinated way to deliver a better service for riders.
Thanks. So Jim Hawley from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab writes that he's excited that the council is working on sustainable aviation fuels, which is a major R&D focus at Berkeley Lab, which is true. And asks if we could share any further details about next steps. And I want to flag before I turn this to Adrian, you may ask yourself, why is the Bay Area Council working on sustainable aviation fuels? And the fact is that a lot of our member companies who have a net zero pledge, a lot of their emissions actually come from travel, from business travel or regular airline travel. And so they've pushed us to be involved with this to help bring down their company's net zero, or to meet their company's net zero goals. But Adrian or Julian, can you talk about the next steps there?
Sure, happy to do so. Great question, Jim. Currently, the California Air Resources Board, as part of our scoping plan for achieving California's net zero goals, calls on sustainable aviation fuels to meet California's jet fuel needs, about 80% of California's jet fuel needs by 2040. Up from less than 1% today. And so sustainable aviation fuels are made from biomass, recycled vegetable oils, and tree trimmings and other biomass products. There's currently only 2 sustainable aviation fuel manufacturing facilities in California. There's the larger one in Southern California in Paramount, and we have a smaller facility in the Bay Area. But our goal for this year is really twofold. One, we're working on legislation right now that would add sustainable aviation fuels as an eligible project under the Governor's Leadership Act. This would allow the governor to identify a project and give it expedited CEQA review, so it doesn't get held up in courts. And it's important to do that because the federal government, through the IRA, is giving, the Inflation Reduction Act is giving incentives and funding for sustainable aviation fuel development. There's no reason why California can't be a leader in this market if we can get out of our own way, as is the case with many policy areas. So we're trying to make that happen through legislation. We're having a few discussions right now with potential authors, so watch that space. And also through the low carbon fuels process, we are asking CARB to extend the carbon intensity rating for new SAF production facilities to a period of 20 years. And that carbon intensity rating really is a linchpin for how to finance a lot of these projects. But that rating can change any year by CARB, which really undermines the financial certainty needed for lenders to finance these big projects. So we want to get that rating kind of locked in stone to help give those assurances to the financial sector, to help get the loans, to help build the facilities. So those are the 2 areas we're working on.
And
Thank you.
we'll be inviting our committee members to join those coalitions very, very soon, as soon as we iron out the language for both the letter and the bill.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Adrian. Okay, so I think I'm going to turn it back to Jim. Before I turn it back to Jim, I want to thank Kirsten Vernon, who's at least sitting in the square next to me on my screen. She put this together, and she's the head of membership for us. And she also does briefings or organizes briefings when one of you or one of our companies reaches out and asks, maybe you have some other executives that are trying to understand a policy area, or just what the heck is the Bay Area Council up to, or you have a really important issue that you want us to help with. And so please do reach out to Kirsten. She's fun and also really smart, and loves to set up these meetings and brings in the policy staff to help out with that. So with that, let me turn it back over to Jim Wunderman.
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks, team, for the great concise presentations and the responses to the very good questions that were asked. And I know there's a lot more questions out there. And, I would say in all the time I've been doing this, which is now a pretty long time, the challenges that we're facing, they're more complex. And the region's in a situation where there's doubters about the veracity of the Bay Area going forward. We've lost some population. There's always a story that, Silicon Valley is yesterday's news, and, what's happened in downtown San Francisco, what's going on in Oakland in terms of safety and crime. I mean, all these things are, I think they're kind of higher level problems. The transportation issue, there's really a very difficult set of differences going on about what a transportation funding measure would or should or shouldn't do. Just a lot of that stuff. So I just ask you for your participation going forward. We're going to be working through a lot of these issues. We want the Bay Area Council to have a voice, which means you need to have a voice. And in a lot of cases, we really don't. There's not an easy solution to how you address public safety in the Bay Area when crime has gone up in a bunch of areas, and at the same time you're trying to have people feel safe, whether they live here or are visiting here. You're also trying to make sure that we're not punishing criminals in unjust ways and trying to find balance in some of these areas. But I'm really proud of the group. The accomplishments that we've had. It's not easy to pass a bill in Sacramento. It's not easy to get BART to take a real listen and say, yeah, we're going to change the way we think and operate. And I took BART yesterday, and I urge you all, take BART. It's like the new BART. Everything works. It's safe. It's a whole new feeling on BART. And I think the Bay Area Council, Laura's work and, this team really had a lot to do with it, because we named the problem and we named solutions. And, BART, the board and the staff, Bob Powers and GM and his team adopted what we asked him to do. And it's not a done job, but things are really different. So when we're able to focus on an issue, I think, there's no better group to make it happen. I was really happy to hear Julian say our new San Jose office, because that's really important. I think, one of the changes that's happened is that we're kind of shifting to a focus on cities. The pandemic left our major cities in a world of hurt. A few years ago, I would have probably said the problem in the Bay Area is the suburban areas are sort of aging and, need some definition of how they move forward. But what's actually happened is the pandemic's really put the downtown areas in our cities in a different situation that needs to get addressed. So we're looking at downtown San Jose, downtown Oakland, downtown San Francisco, to make sure that those areas recover, that people feel comfortable going back to work. I've been out to a couple of restaurants in different places lately, and they're filling up. People are coming back. I think there's a certain amount of excitement as people are seeing the improvements actually kind of hit home here, and we want to build on that momentum, get more riders back on our transit systems, more people in our restaurants, and seeking out entertainment and fun activities and so forth. And eventually people from around the country and around the world see this, it's reality based, and they start coming back. They start moving here again. We see our population start lifting rather than declining. These are the signs we'll be looking for in the future. The only way we can accomplish that is actually by taking on these challenges and addressing them head on, and working with the leadership in the legislature in our cities and the federal government to get these solutions in place and really this Bay Area. And I know we're all proud to be part of it and excited about the future. So with that, we'll give you a few minutes back to your day. Again, thank the team and thank all of you for participating, and we'll look forward to working with you as 2024 matures. Thanks, everybody.